Welcome! So this is part 3 of our RIC video training series. And in this video we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about the RIC team itself. We're going to discuss each position on the RIC team and the responsibilities that each member has on that team. We're also going to talk about how to manage the down firefighter. We're going to discuss converting the harness, as well as a lot of the different options we have for air management. And lastly, we're going to go over moving the down firefighter out of the building. So we're going to discuss lifting and dragging techniques, as well as some common terminology. So I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Let's go get after it. So before we actually start talking about RIC deployments, it's important that we talk about a concept called the inside-out approach. So the inside-out approach is basically just the down firefighter being rescued by a crew operating nearby, by their own crew, or even through self-rescue. So there's an interesting study that Don Abbott created called Mayday by the Numbers, which was a detailed look at Mayday operations, RIC team deployments, and line of duty deaths over the years. And they found some interesting statistics. One of those is that only 11% of firefighters rescued occur from the actual RIC team themselves. So the large majority of actual rescues of down firefighters occur from a crew operating inside or the firefighter's own crew. So it's important to note, this is a very viable option to get our own out of the structures through nearby operating crews. There's a couple things you need to be aware of in terms of our policy. One is that crews need to maintain discipline on their assigned roles with 2 exceptions. One being that you can immediately effect rescue for the down firefighter, and the other being if command assigns you to RIC, assigned you to assist with the RIC operation. So just things to keep in mind, we need to consider that inside-out approach if we're really looking to save our own.
When talking about RIC team activations, it's important to recognize each individual's role and responsibility on that RIC team when you actually deploy for a down firefighter. So I'll start with the positions in order and go over their tools they're carrying and their responsibilities during an actual Mayday or RIC team deployment. So your first 2 individuals in the door are going to be the firefighters. They're going to be carrying a set of irons, so an axe and a halligan between the 2 of them. Their sole job is to search. It's important to understand too that during these, or the line of duty deaths that we looked at, the vast majority of the time, a pass device was not heard. So it's important to know that when you're deployed as a RIC team, if you're a firefighter, you may end up doing a conventional type search or searching to the last known location that the Mayday firefighter told you he was at or where he was operating, he or she was operating. So the first 2 in the door are the firefighters, and their sole goal in deployment is to search. Once they get to the down firefighter, they're going to perform a harness conversion and then secure the air supply. On the way out, they're also going to be doing the bulk of the moving of the down firefighter on the way out of the structure. The third person in the stack to deploy would be the officer, and he's going to be overseeing all radio communications, and he's going to be carrying a TIC. His job is to oversee the operation and make sure that he's communicating with the RIC group supervisor on what they may need, whether it be another RIC team or more air or whatever. So they're the third one in the door. They have the TIC, they're overseeing the operation. Once they get to the down firefighter, their job is to begin looking for secondary means of egress and then communicating with command on the condition of the down firefighter, what they're doing at that moment, how they're going to fix the down firefighter's problem, and then how they're going to actually exit the structure. Is it following the RIC rope out, or is it through a secondary means of egress? The last person in the door will be the engineer. The engineer is going to be carrying the RIC pack, and the RIC rope is going to be draped over their shoulder. They're going to have one hand continually on the RIC rope as it deploys out of the bag, feeling for the rings and the knots to let them know how far they're in. They're going to anchor that RIC rope to an immovable object on the exterior, and then when they get to the down firefighter, they're going to tie that rope off to an immovable object, making sure that it's tight in both directions. They're also going to be the individual that leads out of the structure on the way out. So again, it'll go 2 firefighters in the front, officer will be the third one in the door, and then the engineer. When they go to exit the structure, you're actually going to have your engineer leading out along the RIC rope, your 2 firefighters in the middle moving the down firefighter, and then your officer will be the 4th person in the back of the stack.
Let's talk briefly about the RIC group supervisor. The RIC group supervisor is a vital role and needs to be filled early on into the RIC activation. This role should be filled at the battalion chief level. This may mean that the incident commander transfers over to the RIC group supervisor because they may have the best image or visualization of what's going on with the RIC group, or it might be filled by an additional battalion chief. The role of the RIC group supervisor is primarily the coordination of the RIC group. This includes ensuring the safety of the RIC group, as well as calling for additional resources and communication between the RIC group and between the incident commander.
There's two different ways we can actually go about converting this harness or turning the pack into a harness. The first way we've all been trained on, because we've done it for a number of years, that's to loosen both sides, lift the leg up, detach the strap, and then rebuckle it under their leg. So what that looks like is basically loosening both sides of the pack. Once I find this landmark, which is the buckle, I never want to let that go. So when I find that, I can loosen the lower side. I may have to pull this firefighter up and over to actually get to that side. Once I find this buckle, get to that lower side, loosen it, come over to this higher side, loosen that. The buckle never leaves my hand. The leg comes up, and then it's rebuckled underneath. I'm sure everybody here has done this, knows that it's fairly easy and it should be really, really quick to perform. My advice would be to loosen both sides. Don't try and just loosen one side, always loosen both sides. So another potential option when it comes to a harness conversion would be to actually use the firefighter's belt, connect their waist strap from their SCBA through their belt. So there's a number of ways we can do that. One thing with this is it's kind of up to you guys. If you try this and you like it and it's something that you want to continually train on, you'll find more efficient ways to do it. On this one, a lot of the times you can get away with just loosening one side of the SCBA harness, which is nice. I'll show you with it totally loosened, but sometimes you can get away with just one side being loosened. So once I loosen this and I disconnect it, one option I have is to actually just go around the entire belt itself, plug it back in, and then snug it down. Snug it down on both sides as tight as you can. Another potential option would be to actually go through, take the male end, since the male end is actually skinnier than the female end, it'll actually fit through the D-rings on the belt. So you can actually put the male end through one of the connection points on the belt, either the D-ring or this clasp on the front. Actually take the male end, put it through that, and make your connection. Make sure it stays snug down. One thing we found is that by using the waist strap on the SCBA through the belt, the pack will ride up a little bit higher, so you'll have more play in the pack, and the pack itself will end up higher on the firefighter. So make sure these shoulder straps, when you go to move the firefighter, are pulled all the way down. From that point, the RIC pack would get hooked. If you're using if you're actually using the RIC pack to supply air to the firefighter, the RIC pack would get connected to their harness down here, and then be connected in between their legs.
Okay, so in this section we're going to discuss the responsibilities of the air secure firefighter. But before we start, we want to mention that there are many ways to secure air to the downed firefighter. We're not trying to tell you one way to do it. We're just giving you our input based on some of the things that we've seen at classes we've taken, our analysis of the line of duty death reports and what those have showed, and just what we've seen at training on an anecdotal level on what seems to work and what doesn't. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go through a step-by-step in what the responsibilities are for the air secure firefighter. The first thing is I'm going to come up to the downed firefighter and I need to silence their pass. It's going to be virtually impossible for me to communicate if I've got the pass blaring in my ear. So I'm going to go ahead and silence that first. Number two, I'm going to go ahead and feel and try to determine whether or not the firefighter has pulled their mask or their regulator. If they haven't pulled their mask or regulator, I then need to run my hand down the regulator hose to ensure that they haven't disconnected it from the quick connect. Once I've ensured that, I can take a look at their remote gauge and see if they have air in their cylinder and if they're breathing. This firefighter may not have an air problem, or they may just need a little bit of air, which you can supply with the UAC to the firefighter's pack. Okay, so let's take a look at what you're most likely going to find with the downed firefighter, and that is that the firefighter had pulled either their regulator or their mask off entirely. So what we're recommending in these scenarios is that you simply replace the firefighter's mask and regulator with their own mask and regulator. You do not use the one in the RIC bag. This allows you to do a few things. One, it keeps you from having to attach the RIC pack to the firefighter, which can be pretty cumbersome and difficult to remove the firefighter with. And number two, the firefighter's mask and regulator are already conformed to their face and they're already connected to their pack. And so by simply replacing that, you can add a little bit of air with the UAC and you're ready to drag the firefighter out unencumbered. Okay, so there are situations where there are advantages to using other components in this RIC pack. So let's talk about a few of those. One of those is if the firefighter doesn't have a pack on, the regulator or mask you can't find or they're damaged, you're going to have to use the regulator and mask out of the RIC bag and attach the firefighter to the RIC pack. Another consideration is using the buddy breather system on the RIC pack. So let's do a quick review. If you remember, by hooking this up, we breathed on the lowest bottle first, then the full bottle. And so with the UAC, you're essentially getting a half bottle because it equalizes. So there are situations where you may need more air than just the UAC can provide. I'll give you a few examples. If you happen to be sheltering in place, awaiting another RIC team, maybe you're waiting for heavy rescue to open up a wall, or you have an extended pull that's going to take a long time to get the firefighter out, you may want to consider hooking them up to the buddy breather because it gives you a full cylinder. But outside of that, generally speaking, again, going back to efficiency and speed to get the firefighter out, we're recommending using the UAC and pulling the firefighter with the replaced mask and regulator.
There's kind of two options here, and it's conditions dependent. So one way that I put this mask on is by sitting them up, getting them behind him and putting the mask on. And again, that would be if conditions will allow it. If conditions are still pretty unbearable, I might want to leave the firefighter down on the ground and get this mask back on him while keeping him as low as possible. In this situation, I'm actually going to sit the firefighter up. So I'll go ahead and sit the firefighter up and get right behind him. I'm going to take their mask and I'm going to get my hands inside and I'm going to grab with my pinky and my ring finger, I'm going to grab the plastic on the bottom part of the mask and kind of pull it out. So I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to shoot for this chin cup in here going to the downed firefighter's chin. I can use my forearms to actually pull their head back and pull the mask over their head. So in this situation, this firefighter took a breath. In reality, he may not. So once I get the mask on him, I'm going to keep pressure against the regulator and pull it into my chest, and I'm going to start tightening on these lower straps. So I'm going to grab the lower strap, tighten it, grab the other lower strap, snug it up, move to the top, and then when I get to this actual top forehead one, I'm just going to snug that one up. A lot of the things we see is this one on the top gets pulled the most and it creates a gap in the top of their mask, leaving a big gap there, letting a lot of air out. So once I have that mask on, I feel like I have a good seal, I can roll the firefighter over onto their right side. That gives me access to the left side of the pack, where I can come down here, grab my UAC connection, and make that connection. So once I make that connection, I have to compare these gauges. Once these gauges equal up, once this is a half a bottle and this is a half a bottle, it takes about a minute. I know that I've gotten everything out of this bottle that I can. This UAC gets disconnected. At that point, I have to make sure that this regulator is activated It should be activated from when they pulled it. You can assume that when they pulled their mask or their regulator that they didn't hit their air saver switch. But I have to make sure that they're still getting air, and that this regulator is activated. I can do that by coming up here and just breaking their seal. So now I know that this regulator is delivering air to this downed firefighter. If it's not, I can actually activate it by hitting the front of the regulator. I can chase the problem, make sure that the bottle is on, and from there, hopefully we have air. I don't have to attach the downed firefighter to the rig pack. I can actually just start dragging them out after my harness conversion firefighter is converted to harness. In the scenario that you find the downed firefighter who's actually, they left their mask on and just pulled their regulator, the process for the hot fill is the same. You're going to use the downed firefighter's regulator. Once you put that on, just follow all the steps previously described, and then you can get the firefighter executed.
Okay, so in this last section, we're going to talk about actually getting the firefighter out of the building. Specifically, how to lift and drag the firefighter. So we're talking about firefighter movement. One of the things we have to cover first is communication. So one thing we typically see out here is when people are dragging a victim from search or dragging a downed firefighter, sometimes they'll say things like, okay, we'll drag on 3. 1, 2, 3, drag. So does that mean I pull on drag or I pull on 3? And so what we can see is some uncoordinated movement and some duplication of effort, and it can just be kind of a mess. So one of the things we're recommending is just very simple lines of communication. 2 words, ready, go. So the lead will say ready, and if the other firefighter isn't ready, that's when you say stop. I'm not ready, I need to readjust my hand or whatever it may be. So ready, stop, not ready, ready, go. So it's just the same line of communication, 2 words to keep it simple, and to have a very coordinated movement of the firefighter. The way we used to manage these situations is we'd have one firefighter up at the shoulder straps pulling, and the other firefighter down at the waist pushing. And there can be some problems with this. If the firefighter at the shoulder straps is pulling faster than the waist firefighter can push, then they end up falling onto the crotch of the firefighter, and the pull firefighter ends up having to pull both parties. You can have extra difficulty if the floor is really slippery and that back firefighter can't gain traction to push. You can have problems there. Or if there's a lot of friction on the floor and you just can't get anything to push with. And so what we found works better, generally speaking, is having both firefighters go up to the top, to the front, and grabbing a shoulder strap, using that terminology we talked about, ready, go, and dragging the firefighter that way. Okay, so let's talk about moving firefighters up and down stairs. So again, to reiterate, the same communication applies to lifting techniques as it does to dragging. We're still using ready, go in all of these scenarios. So the difficulty with moving a firefighter up the stairs is that typically the cylinder valve will get caught up on the lip of the stair. And so the way we approach this is that we put the down firefighter with the cylinder facing the stairs, sitting in an upright position. We then have the top firefighter grab the shoulder straps, with the lower firefighter grabbing at the knees of the down firefighter. Our goal here on this initial section of the lift is just to do one stair at a time. Again, making sure that we clear that cylinder valve from the lip of the stair. And so we're going to go up a few stairs first before the lower firefighter can readjust their grip from the knees to putting the knees over the shoulder. When this happens, we can do one lift and start walking up the stairs. Okay, so the way we're approaching taking a firefighter downstairs is a lot easier than going up. Where we're going to do this is we're going to sit the firefighter up with the head or the bottle facing downstairs. You can do this with 1 or 2 firefighters, but we're going to get behind the firefighter grabbing the shoulder straps, and we're going to let gravity do most of the work here. We're not really going to be lifting, we're essentially just going to be dragging them down the stairs. So again, this is pretty easy, and you should be able to do this without a lot of effort. If you're using 2 firefighters, you can literally face down the stairs and walk at a pretty good comfortable pace to get them out of the building quickly. There are some scenarios potentially where you may face high heat and you don't want to be standing up in the stairwell. We understand that. And so you can attempt to drag the firefighter down the stairs. Again, you have gravity working for you in this situation, so it's not terribly difficult. You just need to make sure that the firefighter is facing in the correct direction where the cylinder valve is not going down the stairs. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for joining us. That concludes our RIC video training series, and we're looking forward to seeing you out at the in-service. One of the things we want to mention is that moving forward, engine companies will be more consistently assigned to RIC, and engine companies will be receiving RIC packs. And so it's important that we all become adept at these skills. If you have any questions about any of the topics discussed in this video, please reach out to us at training, or you can talk to Lieutenant Wooden, who's assigned to Station 5. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there.